After 15 long months on the sidelines, finally we're back for the opening round of the Hi-Tec Oils Australian Super Truck Nationals here at Wakefield Park. Brian Vanderwacker here alongside Lockie Mansell. Lockie finally racing is back and it's going to be fantastic.
How good is it, Brian, to have the big rigs back on the track at the Nation's Spectator track at Wakefield Park Raceway. Lots of work done during the COVID-induced break on the trucks. We've got some new trucks hitting the track. We've got some drivers that we haven't seen racing those big machines before. We've got plenty of the main contenders returning for another crack at the title. Let's head down to the pits and catch up with some of our main protagonists.
Mate, absolutely fantastic. That 15-month break was a killer. So to get back into that truck and cut some laps here at Wakefield Park, man, it's like Christmas. GCG Turbo's got us a new top turbo and we've got about 15 pound extra boost. And we've got some new tyres from Ox Traffic. And mate, this thing's on rails out here today. So just doing all those little things. After this round, we're going to give it a rebuild. Give the piston and lines a bit of a freshen up. It's getting a little bit breathing heavy, but you know, we had to do what we had to do, and yeah, we'll just keep motoring through today.
Well, actually, we were a bit slack. We left it till about 2 weeks before the race, and then we dragged it out of the yard, and it's been sitting in the sun for 12 months, so that wasn't any good for the red paint, and we've had to respray it, and did a little bit till it worked to the turbos. The track, it's pretty slippery out there, and there's not much traction, so but everybody's struggling with it, so we'll see how we go.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. We're sick of being locked up for a while. We're glad to be out and playing again now. I've been chomping at the bit to get here, and actually this weekend was probably the quickest we've been around here. I was wrapped to get a 17.4 in qualifying, so we qualified second. I was real quite happy with that, actually. We actually made a new bonnet for it, which is a fair bit lighter, made out of carbon fibre and fiberglass, and just a bit of suspension work and a couple of mods on the engine as well.
Yeah, really good. Really happy to be back. Even a couple of weeks before, with all of the with all the COVID issues going on, we weren't quite sure whether we'd be able to race. So yeah, really happy. It's a lot of time and effort goes into in the off season preparing your truck. So it's a bit hard to get stuck into that when you know you're not going to race. So yeah, a bit of a hole, I suppose, as far as things to do, and you know, we had to find something else to do, so I went fishing.
Oh mate, it's unreal. It wouldn't be caught anywhere else really. Typical last minute repairs last week before racing, 2 years off, still doing everything last minute. We've changed the ratio of the rear diff just to try to get a few more legs down the straight. Other than that, bugger all.
It was my dad's truck. He raced back in the early 90s. My father was Brian Noonan. It was given to me by Dave Pittman Trucks, and we've rebuilt it, and this is the end result. It's all pretty new. It's got, even though it's an old truck, it's got electronic motor, electronic gearbox, a few bits and pieces, and it's pretty good, thanks.
Lockie, there was one common trend there for everyone, just so excited to finally get back racing. 9 trucks ended for this weekend.
Interesting to hear about some of the development work that's gone onto these trucks during the break. A lot of work on engines to improve horsepower, brakes, suspension, and a few teams have also tried to take some of the weight out of their trucks as well, including Frank Amoroso. We heard that he's gone to that fiberglass bonnet, which means that he no longer needs a fully team of pit crew to help him open and lift up the bonnet whenever he wants to work on the truck. But let's have a look at the grid positions, and it's a familiar sight. Stephen Zammit, 6-time Australian Super Truck champion, on pole position ahead of Barry Butwell, back to Frank Amoroso and Marcus Pilwitz. Lockie Fern, best of all light truck runners in the Isuzu, starting out at position 5.
It's going to be a good race, of course. Interesting format always as well for the Australian Super Truck Nationals, particularly here at Wakefield Park. The opening race of the weekend was 6 laps. This particular grid is based off the results of the earlier race.
And it's going to be Stephen Zammit in the Kenworth and Barry Butwell, the Max Superliner, side by side down to the start-finish line. We are set to go racing in the Hi-Tec Oils Australian Super Truck Nationals this round, presented by Regents Park Trucker Line, and it's Stephen Zammit who gets a very good start. Frank Amoroso jabs it down the inside of Barry Butwell on the run into turn 2. Butwell trying to hang tough on the outside. They'll drag race side by side up the hill, and it's Butwell who gets muscled out into the dust, and he will lose third position to Marcus Prilwitz.
What a wild start it was. Good jump though by Zammit. He's around the top section of the circuit and already put probably a truck's gap between himself and the rest of the field. But wild start as we ride on board here with Mark Noonan across the top section of the racetrack.
Great to see Mark Noonan back this weekend in that beautifully restored Scania, the truck that his father Brian Noonan raced back in the 1990s. He's sitting derelict in a paddock for quite some years, and only recently did they start working on it and got it back out onto the track. But look at the margin that Stephen Zammit already has over second place Frank Amoroso after the first half a lap here at Wakefield Park.
You'd expect that, wouldn't you, of course, from Zammit back here once again. Didn't quite get the title in 2019 as Prilwitz looks down the inside here at the final turn, gets the job done. Amoroso might try and do the over and under trick here out of the final turn and back down the main straight. He might just make it work as well, side by side. Amoroso on the inside. He'll have the inside line for turn number 1. The very fast kink here. In fact, he's going to get the job done before they even get to turn number 1.
These super trucks stay limited to a top speed of 160 kilometres an hour, and they check and enforce that with GPS loggers that they have on board each of these trucks. And you can imagine why they have that regulation in place, Brian. It's more for safety than anything, because if one of these big rigs goes firing off the racetrack, you can certainly imagine that they'll do a fair bit of damage. There is Barry Butwell. He slips back to position number 4 in this race. Always goes pretty well here at Wakefield Park, Barry Butwell, but the Max Superliner makes its speed a bit differently to the Kenworths. It's a bit more nimble around the top part of the circuit, not quite as strong in a straight line. As we have a look at this opening sequence of corners on board with Mark Noonan, you could see that Frank Amoroso sent it down the inside of Butwell. Butwell got hung out to dry on the exit of turn 2.
Lucky not to lose more time there, wasn't he, as he works his way back onto the track. Another look at the moment here at turns 1 and 2. It was very close, wasn't it, between Butwell and Amoroso there on the inside at turn number 2, but thankfully they get out the other side and they continue on in the second race of the weekend. Back on board here with Frank Amoroso. He's probably closing ever so slightly here on your race leader of Stephen Zammit. You mentioned about the top speed. What it means then in these trucks is you've got to have a truck that goes really well into the turn, getting off the turn in order to reach that top speed of 160 kilometres per hour.
And at Wakefield Park they do reach that 160 kilometres an hour just before the start-finish line. Frank Amoroso driving with so much confidence at the moment. The work that they've done to that truck, not just on the horsepower and the weight, but also on the braking package, that's giving Frank Amoroso, the 2014 champion, a lot of confidence to attack under brakes. He's always been a driver who loves going for the big sends. I think we'll be seeing even more of that from Frankie Amoroso in season 2021, and he's really starting to apply the pressure to our race leader, Stephen Zammit.
Certainly tight at the top, isn't it? It's not done with yet in these early stages. Half race distance here as Amoroso now is right on the back of Steve Zammit as we look at the rear of the Kenworth 401 here, out of the fishhook section. Possibly, maybe a chance to get a pass done later on the race if he can get the truck down the inside there at the left hand of the fishhook.
The other thing to keep in mind for Steve Zammit is that they have been managing a few temperature issues with his truck throughout the weekend. He says it's good for a couple of laps, but after that it starts to get hot, and I just have to back off the pace slightly to make sure that it doesn't overheat, and that costs me a bit of horsepower.
They've just about changed everything in it, including the radiator cap, and the word is from the team they're actually going to change the radiator ahead of the next round, and we're going to see a completely new design, so watch out for that. The next round of Winton coming up in July. Robert Fern making up a spot here towards the rear as well.
And he made up that spot because Mark Noonan got really sideways coming out of turn 10 as we see a lot of smoke billowing out of Barry Butwell's truck a bit further up the road. The battle is on in earnest for the race lead. Amoroso has caught the back of Stephen Zammit's truck. Now it's a case of figuring out where he might try and make a passing manoeuvre. I have a feeling, Brian, that turn 10, the final corner, might be the spot where Amoroso thinks about going for a big lunge down the inside.
And that's if you can get the run off this turn here at the fishhook and then through the right hand to the second last turn that leads you down that back straight. Looking here at Butwell once again, just trying to hold off his position there outside the top 3 at the moment. If anything, it looks like that truck, I should say, is probably slowing ever so slightly.
Yeah, Butwell's limping at the moment, and a lot of smoke billowing out of it. That's a lot more than what you should normally say. Robbie Fern rounds him up on the outside, exiting the fishhook, so I dare say that Barry Butwell will be limping that Max Superliner back to the pits. Not an ideal start to his championship campaign for season 2021 in the Hi-Tec Oil Super Truck Nationals.
Yeah, definitely a shame they've been having some fuel pump issues prior to the opening few races of the weekend, so whether or not that's rearing its ugly head once again, we're not quite sure, but he's always had some great rivalries with Steve Zammit over the last couple of years, but unfortunately not quite there this time by.
Stephen Zammit has responded. Frank Amoroso was putting him under some pressure, but Zammit has punched out the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 17.2 seconds the lap time for Stephen Zammit. We're seeing some of the fastest ever laps that we've seen from Super Trucks at Wakefield Park this weekend. The track conditions absolutely perfect to see scorching lap times, and also the development work that a lot of the teams have put into the trucks during the COVID break has seen them emerge with faster and stronger weapons for the 2021 season.
Great looking brand new helmet design as well for Stephen Zammit at round number 1 this weekend. He's even got a bit of a special slogan on there, back to Scott McLaughlin, which says winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. So a great helmet design there, and he was very proud to unveil that prior to the season starting.
He's got his young son, 10-year-old Jason Zammit, in the pits helping out this weekend as well. Jason's recently started doing some go-karting, and I don't think it'll be too much longer before we see young Jason behind the wheel of one of these super trucks as well. We begin the final lap of the race, and Marcus Prilwitz doing a good job sitting in position number 3, the number 31, Max Superliner. He's been able to keep the front-running Kenworth drivers honest. So we look back to Lachlan Fern. He's the highest placed of the light trucks in the Isuzu. They run a much smaller capacity engine compared to the super trucks. It's only, when I say only, 6.7 litres compared to sort of 14 litres for the machines that are running at the front of the field.
You mentioned young Jason, of course. For Frank Amoroso, actually, he wants to race 3 generations of the Zammit. So we're talking about Charlie Zammit, of course, father of Steve. He's raced Steve now for the past couple of years, and then wants to stick around to try and race young Jason as well, so we can expect to see Frank Amoroso around for a little bit longer anyway.
Here is Stephen Zammit, though, came into this weekend at Wakefield Park with by far and away the most dominant record out of all of the drivers who've raced trucks at Wakefield Park since their first visit to the circuit back in 2013. This will be Stephen Zammit's 23rd race victory, if you don't mind, at the Nation Spectator track. And he kicks off his 2021 Super Trucks Championship campaign in fine style, winning the first race of the season.
Dominant drive in the end, wasn't it? A tremendous start to his championship assault, of course. That's back-to-back race wins so far from the opening 2 races of the weekend. He'll be happy with that one as well. But of course, as we know, with the format for the Super Truck Nationals, it's all going to change for the 3rd race of the weekend.
It is indeed, because we will invert the grid for race number 3, which comes up very, very shortly. Massive crowd of spectators at Wakefield Park as well. One of the biggest crowds that I think we've seen for truck racing. Everybody's been really keen to get themselves trackside to see the trucks live in action. Stephen Zammit, your race winner, ahead of Frank Amoroso and Marcus Prilwitz. Robbie Fern, good drive from the back of the grid up to 4th, ahead of Mark Noonan, Lockie Fern, Mark Schutz, Mitchell Prilwitz, and then Barry Butwell, unfortunately not making it to the checkered flag after those mechanical issues.
Yeah, look, mate, I was just head down. As soon as that green flag came out, mate, I was just pedal to the metal, and down in turn 1, I had Amoroso on the right-hand mirror, completely filled it up, and mate, I just looked straight forward and just kept going. So when you hear it hold him up for a little bit, I think Barry's got a bit of a turbo issue, which we're trying to fix up now for him, but yeah, no, I was hammer down, mate, and I was out of there.
Ah, yes, it was actually, and unfortunately I stepped on the gas a couple of times a little bit early and gave that edge to Steve to get away, but then I wheeled him back in again, I started running out of brakes a bit actually, because the water wasn't working. That's what the boys are trying to fix now, but we should have it right for the next round, so look out, here we come.
Oh, it's pretty good. Oh, it was a good result. I'm yet to see a lap time, but I think it'll be probably the quickest that we've ever gone. To finish in the top 3 with Stephen, and so close to Stephen and Frank's, remarkable for this truck anyway, yeah, and me.
Yeah, bit of a tangle up on the first corner, but got through it, no worries. Got through the pack a bit. Young bloke cut in on me, and there's a fair bit of smoke. It's pretty hard to see at the best of times, so Yeah, I sort of tangled him. I could feel us hooked up, so the only way to do was to keep driving through it. So, yeah, we separated and went my own way.
Our smaller turbo in the compound setup is a new turbo that we haven't tried before, but it's just a little bit too small. It was cause it was acting like a bit of a cork in there. And coming down the straight, I heard a chuff when I've backed off, and next corner, no boost. That's it. Turbo said, I've had enough.
Great to hear from some of the competitors there at the end of race number 2. Completely different for race number 3. It's going to be a reverse grid start. So make sure you're with us for the opening round of the Hi-Tec Oil Super Truck Nationals here at Wakefield Park.
Isn't it great? It wasn't a bit touch and go, but it was a bit worrying. Towards the end, you think, what's going to happen in this world that's going to stuff the whole show up again? But it worked out pretty well. We're here, sun's shining, wind's blowing, but everybody's happy. All trucks on the track, they're all been repaired and ready to go, so it's going to be a great day. Hi-Tec Oil's been terrific. They've come on board for the whole series this year. They're pretty good. We've got our other sponsors that make up the difference. And not make up the difference, but they actually a big part of what we do. Regent's Park Trucker Line, they've come on board this at the last minute, which is grateful as all hell. We've got Kinetic Fleet Services, they've come on board. Direct Power Steering, which is actually me. We've come on board with it as well. And All Freight Finances.
You know, we gave it a break in last year and that, obviously COVID, but we've spoken to the truck guys and they're pretty keen to do something, and we want to, you know, it's our business. Hi-Tec Oils is very big in the transport industry, so we should be supporting the people that use our products. No, we survived pretty well. We're in the industrial market, and the industrial took off really well. As we know, transport got a lot of business last year through all the people in online shopping and things like that, so we did well.
Great to have George Gambino here as part of the Hi-Tec Oil Super Truck Nationals. The opening round here at Wakefield Park. Always great to see supporters jumping behind this series, Lockie.
Hi-Tec Oils, George Gambino, very passionate supporter of motorsport, not just the super trucks, but also the Hi-Tec Oils Bathurst 6 Hour and the Hi-Tec Drift All-Star Series, where some of Australia's top drifters battle it out as well. Right now, though, time to turn our attention back to the Hi-Tec Oils Australian Super Truck Nationals. We flip the grid for race number 3. That means Mitchell Krilwitz will start on pole position ahead of Mark Schutz and Lockie Fern. So 3 light trucks occupying the top 3 positions. Back then to Mark Noonan, Robbie Fern, Marcus Krilwitz, Frank Avaroso, Stephen Zammit. Our race number 2 winner will start for position number 8, and Barry Butwell hopefully will take the start of this race, but his truck quite slow there at the back of the field. Not sure that he'll take up the rolling start for this race.
It's going to be crazy, isn't it? We've got to watch for our strong contenders to come from the back. Robbie Fern here looking out the front of his Volvo prime mover here as they roll down. Double file formation here at the main straight. 6 laps the journey once again, Lockie.
Green flag waves and underway for a reverse grid truck race. Good start from young Mitch Krilwitz. Lockie Fern up the inside of Mark Schutz on the run into turn 2 as well. And then you've got the more powerful super trucks banging bumpers on the run into turn number 2. Frank Avaroso once again with his elbows out, but loses some momentum heading up the hill. And in fact, I think Frank Avaroso has got a bit of a drama here because his truck is going to grind to a halt on the climb up towards turn number 3.
Disappointment there. You can hear some of the onboard audio as he tries to get it started.
I reckon it might just be something as simple as an ignition issue there, Brian, because the truck is quite literally conked out. We can hear Frank Avaroso saying, no power, no power.
They did have idling issues with the truck earlier on in the weekend, which meant he was a bit slow getting up for qualifying at the start of the weekend, so maybe that's a reoccurrence of that issue, not quite sure. He's stuck there. Look at Zammit here making up some spots as well as the safety car has been called.
Yeah, so with Frank Avaroso's truck stopped in that part of the circuit, the officials have obviously decided that that's not a safe position. So for the first time this weekend, the safety car will appear in front of the field. It was on for young and old, wasn't it, Brian, at the start there? You saw some pretty aggressive moves happening into turn number 2. Frank Avaroso was trying to get his elbows out, but then just lost all momentum on the climb up to turn number 3, and there is Frank Amoroso's Kenworth Park, stopped stationary on the side of the racetrack on the approach to turn number 3.
He's actually jumped out and he's jumped back in again. Let's see if he says anything here. Red flag has actually been displayed.
And he's got it fired up again, so it could just be that in all of that congestion down at turn 2, perhaps it was some electrical connection or something else that came loose. It was a relatively easy fix and he's been able to get that truck fired up again. Here we are riding on board Lockie Fern. Actually a pretty good start from young Lachlan, and Mark Schutz squeezing him up hard on the curb at turn number 2.
Jeez, the elbows were out, weren't they? It looks like he was going to lose another spot there in the right-hand side mirror. Lewitz on board here into turn 2 as well. So there's Amoroso down the inside. So I wonder if the contact there actually did anything. Or even there as well. Look at it, it's all contact everywhere, isn't it? You can see him slowing on driver's right.
Might have been that secondary hit there with Mark Noonan. Here we are riding on board with Frank Amoroso. This might tell a bit better story as they run down into turn 2.
Ooh. Just heard like a sudden pop, wasn't it, coming out of turn 2 then, and then it grinds to a halt. The good thing is at least he's got it back started again. And we'll see if he can try and make his way through the field. So it's going to be pretty well a complete restart here. Amoroso now towards the back alongside Zammit.
Good decision from the officials to bring the field back around for a complete restart. So here we go for Super Trucks Race 3 version 2.0. Once again it'll be young Mitchell Garvin Prilwitz, the son of Marcus Prilwitz, who will start the race on pole position. Just 19 years old. Him and a couple of the other young guns, Harvey Dale and also young Riley Fern, the brother of Lachlan Fern. We'll be seeing more of them in the Super Trucks throughout season 21 as we get underway for a restart in race number 3. Mitchell Prilwitz once again leading them down into turn 1. Mark Schultz aggressive on the outside, contact between our two leaders. How was the slide and the save from Mark Schultz, full opposite lock, and he's managed to regain control of that light truck. And here comes Mark Noonan, 3 wide into turn number 3. Hard enough to do that in cars, let alone full-size trucks. Somehow they all managed to get through there in one piece, and it's Mitchell Prilwitz who holds on to the lead.
What an incredible start as they work their way across the top section of the racetrack. Zammit getting hung out to dry there at the back of your shot as well. Wild stuff to start race number 3, as you would come to expect with this reverse grid.
Really good start from Mark Noonan. Some heads-up opportunistic driving, and Mark Schutz, he's on the lock stops again, wrestling the super truck as he heads down into the fishhook. Once again manages to keep it on the black stuff, but he will lose the position to Marcus Prilwitz, who fires round the outside through turn number 9. Here's Frank Amoroso, the aggressor, and he's going to use some of that aggression to try and make a move on Robbie Fern in the Volvo. Stephen Zammit looking down the inside to make up a couple of positions at turn number 10. What a hectic opening lap in this reverse grid super truck encounter.
Some incredible truck handling skills there as Noonan with the pace going down the main straight takes away the race lead now before they get to the kink at turn number 1. Mitchell Prilwitz on board with him now as they go through turn number 2 here, right on the rear of your race leader as well. Mentioned as part of Young Guns Racing, I guess you would say. All the youngsters sharing their trucks all out just to compete against each other, not just in the championship races, but the team events as well.
Mitchell Prilwitz losing another spot to his dad, Marcus, who just drove past up the hill. As we mentioned before, these trucks limited to a top speed of 160 kilometres an hour, but the super trucks with their bigger engine capacity do tend to reach that top speed a little bit more quickly than the light trucks, the Isuzus, with their smaller 6.7 litre motors.
A case of follow me, son, learn the way. Let's work our way towards the front. Speaking of working their way towards the front, here comes Zammit, your 6-time national champion, making his way up through the field.
One of the great things about these reverse grid races is we do get to see the fast drivers having to fight their way through from the back of the grid as Mitchell Prilwitz loses another spot to Stephen Zammit on the exit of turn number 9. And it's a very, I suppose, unique technique to make the most of these super trucks in terms of performance. We see that some of the drivers like to slide them around a lot, but just like race cars, the most effective technique is often to be smooth and minimise the wheel spin and minimise the amount of sliding you're doing on the exit of corners.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And of course, one of the great things about this particular category, of course, let's talk about some more technical aspects as we look at our race leader all sideways. Of course, these trucks weigh 5.5 tonne. That's the minimum weight for these trucks. And when you speak of tyre life, how that weight is actually distributed over the tyres, therefore affects its tyre life. So on the front of the trucks, of course, you've got the steerer tyres. When you break it down, it's roughly near enough to around about 3.3 tonne over the front wheels of the truck. When you've got two wheels, that's almost like you're talking 1,600 kilos going through each tyre. You've got 4 tyres there on the rear. And you're talking around about 2.2 tonne there going over the rear tyres. So the actual weight load over the rear tyres is actually about 500 kilos. Therefore, sometimes the rear tyres actually last longer than the front tyres in these trucks, basically because there's not so much weight going through those rear tyres.
It's a good point that you make there, Brian, and it's pretty much the opposite to what we see in a lot of cars. But like you say, because you've got the dual rear axles, and you've actually got 4 tyres on the rear, so that does mean that the load is distributed a bit more evenly throughout those rear tyres, which is why they sometimes last a bit longer. Steven Zammett's on the move. He's worked his way up to position number 3. He's in behind Mark Noonan. Marcus Prilwitz has taken the lead of the motor race. Really good effort from Marcus Prilwitz. He is very happy with how his Max Superline is performing this weekend. He's actually got a different set of injectors in it this weekend, which he borrowed from another competitor, Anthony Tringali, who unfortunately isn't running, but Marcus Prilwitz has already noticed big performance improvements in that Max Superliner. As we ride on board with Frank Amoroso, Mark Noonan, you feel at the moment, Brian, has just become a bit of a cork in the bottle here, and he's under assault from Zammett and Amoroso. Amoroso down the inside of Zammett. They'll bang panels heading into the fishhook, and Amoroso's going to spin around completely. He got pinched up on the curb, loses the rear end of the number 96, and pirouettes, manages to get going again, thankfully, without losing too many positions. But a bit of contact there between two of the main title protagonists, the drivers who battled for this championship back in 2014.
Looks like Amoroso has lost 2 positions there. It's only going to be 1 now as he works his way back down the inside here at the final turn. Or is he? He's going to get pinched up on the curb for the second time in just about as many corners here. He'll make up that spot as well. Interesting to see what happened there. As you mentioned, it looked like there was a bit of a squeeze there going on through the fishhook as well.
Couple of laps to go. We see a couple of the Isuzu light trucks battling it out for position. Lachlan Fern getting down the inside of Mitchell Prilwitz on the main straight. There is Frank Amoroso. He's fallen back behind Robbie Fern after that incident. This is what it looks like on board with him on the run down through the fishhook.
I'll tell you what, there's a fair bit of room given there, so there wasn't so much of a squeeze. Amoroso looked like he just went in quite hot there into the fishhook section, couldn't quite pull it up, and therefore collected the left-hand side of the Zammett machine. Fascinating shots there as the dust gets kicked up. Amoroso spins that truck. And he's lucky not to make contact here as he comes back onto the racetrack as well.
I'll tell you what, good job from Steven Zammett to maintain control of his truck as well, as he was right out in the grass. Here is Steven Zammett on the tail of Mark Noonan in the battle for position number 2. Through the fishhook they come, and Mark Noonan's all out of shape, and he's going to spin. Steven Zammett has to jump on the anchors to avoid making contact with the back of Mark Noonan's truck. And it looks there, Brian, like Mark Noonan got loose on the exit of the corner. Not sure if there was actually any contact from Steven Zammett at all. I think Mark Noonan might have done that all on his own.
It's been a crazy reverse grid race so far. We've only got really a lap to go now as your leaders work their way back down the main straight as well. So the officials have got plenty of work to do at the end of this race. In fact, Steven Zammett has had to go through pit lane, we believe, for a drive-through penalty. So it's all happening at the moment in this third race of the weekend.
And we're hearing that this penalty is apparently for the incident with Amoroso the lap prior. So one of the challenges for the officials is that they actually bring in all of the sector marshals off the track when the trucks are out there, because obviously there are some safety issues that need to be addressed. So that can make it quite hard to adjudicate on incidents, but I'll tell you what, Brian, that'll be a pretty controversial penalty if indeed that's the case, that it's for the incident between Zammett and Amoroso. Just having a look at this incident that involved Mark Noonan on the exit of the fishhook. Zammett was up on the curb. Oh, wow. If there was contact there. It was only the lightest of touches between the two of them.
There might even be more after this race right there with the officials, because there is onboard footage as well that these drivers and officials can trawl through as well, as we ride on board here with Mark Noonan. It's hard to tell, isn't it, from that shot whether or not there was a slight touch or not. He was lucky, or he did make contact in fact with the tyres, thankfully not significant though.
All of this has worked to the advantage of Marcus Prilwitz. He's pulled a handsome margin over the rest of the field. Last time Marcus Prilwitz won a race in the Super Trucks was here at Wakefield Park back in 2019, but he has driven superbly in this reverse grid format, and he is going to take victory in race number 3 for the opening round of the Hi-Tec Oils Super Truck Nationals. Quite a big margin in the end, back to second place, which will be Robbie Fern. Frank Amoroso recovering from his spin to finish up in position 3.
Crazy race there, the reverse grid race, and what happens for race number 4 is another reverse grid race in some respects.
Indeed, race number 4 we reversed the grid based on qualifying, but Marcus Prilwitz, his truck running the Road Ranger manual gearbox. Bit of a difference between that transmission configuration compared to the automatic gearboxes in a lot of the other trucks. Here's a look at your results. Prilwitz, your winner, ahead of Robbie Fern. Amoroso, Lachlan Fern, again the best of the light trucks, ahead of Mitch Prilwitz, Mark Schutz and Mark Noonan, and then Stephen Zammit after that controversial penalty, finishing down in 8th spot.
Oh, happy to be there. Probably luck. I had a bit to do with it. Apparently there's a lot of carnage behind me, so I didn't have a lot of pressure for most of the race. So I probably would have done very poorly to have not held my position, I suppose. But no, it's good. It's only the second win for the truck ever in the championship, so I'll try and keep it there.
I wouldn't say I got stuck, but I was enjoying Marcus and Mark Noonan have a nice dice there, and I thought I might buy into this. And Frank Amoroso made a lot of ground on us, and hey presto, down the inside he came in the fish hook, and yeah, the rest is history. Coming out of it okay, but the clerk of the course has given me a drive-through penalty for it, so I don't understand why, and we're going to discuss that with him now, but we'll just see what the video comes out with. And yeah, look, if it is what it is, but I'm pretty sure getting hit from behind, I shouldn't be getting a penalty for it, so we'll just see how it unfolds up there.
Yeah, it wasn't what I was planning to do today, but it's what ended up, and yeah, it's all experience. I don't think it was really Steve's fault. My truck's really loose out of there. It's really hard to get the power down. I think I was actually out of control, and yeah, I just lost it. And yeah, Steve just was in the wrong place at the wrong time too, the poor bugger.
Yeah, it was good. New turbo on it. Just getting used to it all. A bit laggy, but we made it work. I just pushed as hard as I could. Just tried to figure the track out, everyone's lines, and yeah, just went as hard as I could.
Plenty to unpack from race number 3 there. The officials did have time to review the incident, and they felt that Stephen Zammit wasn't at fault there in the end of the Frank Amoroso incident. So plenty to unpack ahead of race number 4 here at Wakefield Park. Stay with us, more right after this. The Super Pre race getting set for the weekend. Of course, the final race of the weekend over the distance of 10 laps to complete round number 1 at the Hi-Tec Oils Super Truck Nationals here at Wakefield Park. Lockie Bansell, this is the race that they all build up to at the pointy end of the weekend.
But this is the one where the crowd will flock to the fence, because this is the feature race of the weekend for the trucks. It's a longer 10-lap distance, and it's a full reverse grid based on qualifying. So the very fastest drivers will be starting right at the rear of the field. Let's have a look at our grid positions, and it's Mitchell Prilwitz on pole position ahead of Mark Schutz and Lockie Fern. Mark Noonan next ahead of Marcus Prilwitz, Robbie Fern, Frank Amoroso and Stephen Zammit, our pole sitter. He will go from the 8th and last position on the grid aboard Direct Power steering Kenworth.
Plenty to play out here, of course, over a longer distance, 4 laps longer than what they've done for the rest of the weekend. So plenty to play out here. And of course, at the early point of the season, championship points is also going to be vital.
Once again, double file rolling start to get us underway. Mitchell Prilwitz still pretty inexperienced when it comes to truck racing, as is Mark Schutz. Mark Noonan's done a really good job this weekend. It's his first race meeting aboard that Scania, and he's shown some very competitive pace right throughout the weekend. But ready to go for the Super Prix, for the Hi-Tec Oils Australian Super Truck Nationals this round, presented by Regents Park Trucker Line, and Mark Schutz from the outside of the front row. Great start. They will lead them up into turn 2. Mark Noonan, 2 wheels in the grass. They'll run 3 wide through turn number 2. It comes down to who can get the better acceleration up the hill. Once again, Marcus Prilwitz making a decent start. Robbie Fern, though, drops all 4 wheels off the racetrack in the Volvo. He'll drop right to the rear of the field.
Plenty to play out there, wasn't there? Because there was almost 3 wide action as they went up through the top section of the circuit as well. So you got to be smart in these early stages, considering that it is over the distance of 10 laps, so longer time to make up your spots. But of course, when everyone's compact at the early point of a race, this is normally the best time to make up those positions.
I mentioned that Marcus Prilwitz made a good start. He's already up into second place. Frank Amoroso attacking the back of Mitchell Prilwitz. He gets really good drive out of the fishhook. He'll be on the inside for turn number 9. Tight through there. They'll go side by side. They will swap a bit of paint through the right-hand kick. Amoroso muscles Prilwitz out into the grass and moves up into second position.
No love loss is there at the moment as they got the elbows out in these early stages. Amoroso's put on some daring moves so far this weekend. Hasn't always pulled it off, but so far in the early stages of this final race of the weekend, he certainly has. As Lockie Fern there just losing some spots out of the final turn. Looks like he might lose another one here at the moment as well.
And that's just a case of the horsepower advantage of the super trucks playing to their advantage on the main straight. Mark Noonan goes through, Robbie Fern goes through as well, and Lockie Fern has to just tuck in behind his dad and also Mitchell Prilwitz, who have a bit of a contretemps on the exit of turn 2.
The leaders at the moment starting to pull away as some of our faster trucks are already making their way through the field. It's always great to see, isn't it, that these trucks at the back end of the weekend just sliding around a little bit more as well, and unfortunately for some of them, concentration also proving to be a little bit of a deemer at this point of the weekend.
I think that, Brian, is what you define as terminal understeer there for Mitchell Prilwitz heading through turn number 5. The truck just did not turn into the corner and went straight on. Mitchell Prilwitz gathering it up, but he has dropped to the tail end of the field in behind Lockie Fern. Back to our race leaders. Here comes Frank Amoroso and Stephen Zammit, 3 wide into turn 10. Amoroso down the inside of Mark Schutz. Stephen Zammit looking to try and follow him through on the exit of the final corner. And they will move up into positions 2 and 3. Zammit pulling right to the inside, decides to move back across to the outside. Amoroso, though, will have the preferred line for turns 1 and 2. Zammit will have to think of another position where he can make the move on his sparring partner.
You reckon Zammit forgot about the contact in race number 3? No way, Jose, as we have a replay here of contact through the second to last corner. Lucky to keep that truck back on the straight and narrow.
That was Mitchell Prilwitz, and that was on the opening lap. So we saw that Frank Amoroso got a really fast exit from the fishhook. He was able to position his truck on the inside for turn 9. Mitchell Prilwitz didn't give him a lot of room there. Frank Amoroso was having none of it. He said, I'm in the bigger truck, mate. I'm going to use that to my advantage. You're going out into the grass.
Great to have all the angles covered. This is the moment of the chronic understeer, as you called it, Lockie. Gets it back on. Only loses a spot, though, throughout that in the process. Here we go, back towards this thrilling battle between Amoroso and Zammit. It's continuing on, this battle, isn't it, from race number 3, which we saw earlier. And if he's strong enough through here, might be half a chance here to get himself down the inside at the final turn. A little bit wide there through the exit of the second to last corner. Moves the truck around in the rear vision mirror of Amoroso, and if he can get a good drive here, might be half a chance at turn 1.
They've had lots of great battles over the years, these two drivers, Frank Amoroso and Stephen Zammit. None more so famous than their classic contest for the championship back in 2014, which ultimately went the way of Frank Amoroso in a contest that went down to the very final race of the season, as we've seen Mark Noonan and Robbie Fern making up a couple of spots. Robbie Fern just been a little bit off the pace this weekend. We've seen that he's won races and rounds here at Wakefield Park in the past, but this weekend he hasn't quite had the pace to take the fight up to the ultimate front runners.
Mark shoots here. Truck seems to be slowing at the moment. Or it appeared to be coming out of turn number 2 there, using that speed now as he works his way back up around the top section of the circuit. Of course, some of these smaller trucks haven't quite got the same straight line speed as some of the bigger trucks in front.
Here are our race leaders. Big moment for Frank Amoroso through the fishhook. You can tell that the tyres are well past their best on that machine. Stephen Zammit senses an opportunity, pulls up alongside Amoroso. Will look to do the switchback on the exit of turn 9, gets the overlap for the run down into the final corner at turn number 10. It will be a braking duel between the two of them. Amoroso completely locked up and is going to just about lose it. What a save from Frank Amoroso. I cannot believe that he managed to avoid rotating that Kenworth altogether, but gives second position to Stephen Zammit. He was on the inside and he's been able to take that position.
Amoroso was fully on the lock stops there, wasn't he? Heading into the final turn, and somehow, as you mentioned, kept it going. Thought he was gone for all money, but he continues to hold down that third spot. Zammit now with a beautiful pass, really. The over and under trick working into this final turn, and look at this. The rear's locked, and you would swear at this point that he was going around. Okay, a little shortcut there, but that means nothing as he keeps it on the black stuff heading down the main straight. This is the onboard. This is going to look fantastic. Watch the wheel work of Amoroso here. And listen as well. Oh, that is awesome stuff. He is a lucky, lucky boy, but good on him as well. The truck control of these drivers is just fantastic, and now it's on for your race lead.
So Stephen Zammit has caught up to Marcus Prilwitz, and the challenge for Marcus here is going to be that he's running that road range manual gearbox. Stephen Zammit's got the automatic transmission, and Zammit will get down the inside of Prilwitz into turn number 10, and he will go through to take the race lead. And you might ask, Brian, why is having an automatic gearbox in truck racing an advantage? It's because in a manual gearbox you have to lift off the throttle and then change up to the next gear. That means you lose turbo boost, whereas with the automatic transmission you can just keep your foot planted on the accelerator, and it makes sure that you're always running full turbo boost. So there is a straight line performance advantage with the automatic.
And of course, we heard at the opening of the show as well how Zammit has got a new turbo in that machine for season 2021, and it's increased the boost in that truck. He's very, very happy with the performance of it so far. And of course, these trucks as well, it's sometimes a little bit unknown up and down the paddock as to how much horsepower they produce, but it's somewhere within the vicinity of 1,500 horsepower, if you don't mind. Quite incredible.
Serious amounts of horsepower, and even the Isuzu light trucks that are running the smaller capacity engines, they're still up around the 670 horsepower mark or thereabouts. Obviously a much lighter truck with a better power to weight ratio, so seriously high amounts of horsepower being produced by these big rigs, and that's one of the reasons that the crowds love to watch them and why they put on such spectacular racing. Zammit pulling clear in the lead. Prilwitz under pressure for second position from Frank Amoroso.
Looks aggressive, doesn't he, as he runs the truck off the exit of the final turn. He drops the left-hand side of the truck off the road. Time running out here at the moment as well. Starting lap 7 of 10 here. Amoroso. Can he get this job done and move his way up into position number 2 here? Of course, as we mentioned, championship points when you've got 4 rounds over the course of the season, ever so important, particularly in this Super Pre.
I reckon Frank Amoroso might just be struggling with a bit of front brake wear or overheating front brakes at the moment. We saw a couple of laps ago that huge moment where he locks the rear brakes into turn number 10, and that's an indication that the front brakes are probably a bit past their best. We heard after one of the earlier races as well that they were struggling with some issues with their water-cooled braking system. A lot of these trucks do run water-cooled brakes. As you can imagine, the brakes do get pretty hot because they have to pull up these big 5.5-ton machines over and over again. And here at Wakefield Park, the brakes don't get a lot of recovery time. Lots of hard stops down into turn number 2, into the fishhook, and also the final corner of turn number 10. You've got 3 really big brake applications every lap.
And interesting to note about brakes, some of the trucks run a hydraulic system, some of the bigger trucks though run more of an air brake system, and they run actually 4 booster pots on each of the wheels. And I mean, if you've got a leak or something goes wrong with the air brake system, the unfortunate thing is sometimes the only thing stopping it then is a couple of sprigs, and that's when you're in a whole world of trouble.
Now, can imagine that having a brake failure on one of these 5.5-tonne machines is not the definition of what I would call fun. Probably tend to catch your attention a bit if it happens heading down into turn number 2 as well.
Yep, fastest point of the racetrack, as you mentioned, reaching that maximum speed limit of around about 160 kilometres per hour as we ride on the rear once again here of Mark Noonan.
It's been a really impressive performance from Mark Noonan. First race meeting in the Super Truck Championship. It's a truck, it's not brand new. As we mentioned, his father Brian Noonan raced this truck back in the 90s, but it has been rebuilt and restored. And I think that Mark Noonan, with a bit more development and a bit more time behind the wheel, he's only going to get more and more competitive. So really, really impressive debut performance for Mark.
As you mentioned, watch out for him over the course of the rest of the season. Very big wide cab on that truck as well, isn't it? But once we work our way through the season, and particularly into next season, he's going to be one of the strongest competitors, you've got to feel, and mixing it with some of our leading contenders up the front.
We're hearing stories that there's some other old trucks that are going to come back, and there's some new trucks being built as well. So the future for the Australian Super Truck Nationals is looking really positive. Good to say that we're going to have some new competitors coming into the series. I think it's good too, Brian, to say the younger generation. We're starting to see drivers like young Mitchell Krillwitz and Lockie Fern and young Harvey Dale, who's here this weekend and competed in the teams races earlier in the weekend as well. A lot of those drivers are under 20 years old, so really good to get the next generation of young kids getting involved in super truck competition.
And as we have a look at Stephen Zammit, a little bit of history on the line this season as well. Because, of course, if he can get that 7th national title, he'll break a record.
Oh, we just gave Mark Noonan a rap, and unfortunately, I fear that might be the commentator's curse, because he's dropped it all on his own between turns 3 and 4 and loses the spot to Robbie Fern. But indeed, Brian, at the moment, Stephen Zammit with 6 Australian Super Truck titles under his belt, tied with the late, great Rodney Crick in terms of the most successful drivers in Super Truck history. If Zammit can go on and win a 7th this year, he can break that all-time record. Here is Frank Amoroso. He must be so sick of being stuck behind Marcus Krillwitz. He puts the pressure on Krillwitz, who makes a mistake and runs wide at the critical time there at turn number 10. And Amoroso says thank you very much and moves on through into 2nd position.
It's like the seas parted for him, wasn't it, for Frank Amoroso? Went straight down the inside, got the job done, and now launched himself into that 2nd spot. I spoke to Stephen about possibly trying to break that record and, of course, win the 7th Australian Drivers' Championship, and I said to him, what would that mean? And he actually was a bit hesitant in terms of he would feel a little bit mixed if he was to get that 7th title. The reason for that, he looked up to Rodney as a kid. He loved racing against him. He said it was always an honour. And he said back in Rodney's day, the competition was so competitive. He goes, it's very hard to compare eras, and that's why he feels he would have mixed feelings if he was to get that 7th title this year.
It's true, because Rodney Crick was in an era of drivers that included some of the other great names of super truck racing. The Cedars family, Bill and Luke Cedars, they were front runners. Bob Middleton, another driver who was very successful in truck races. Inky Tulloch, Pee-wee, who came over to Australia and dominated for quite a few seasons on end. Stephen Zammit, though, he's doing all of the right things to prove that he's very much a member of that illustrious club. 1 corner left to run in the Super Free here at Wakefield Park, and he's going to kick off the 2021 Hi-Tec Oils Australian Super Truck Nationals in fine style. 3 wins from the 4 races and the round win to kickstart his title challenge in season 2021.
He's a happy man as we look on board with that new helmet design as well. A perfect way to start a championship campaign, one that he didn't get in 2019. We had the break in 2020, but now the chase for 7 is on. And look how happy he is, banging the truck. As you mentioned, 3 race wins from the 4 on offer this weekend.
Frank Amoroso finishes 2nd in the race and 2nd overall for the round as well. Could this be another title duel between the 2 Kenworths? Final finishing order sees Zammit coming home ahead of Amoroso. Krillwitz will round out your podium for the weekend. Robbie Fern in 4th position ahead of Mark Noonan. Back to the Isuzu's Lockie Fern ahead of Mark Schutz and Mitchell Krillwitz in 8th position.
Yeah, no, really good, mate. It was a great result for the team, and everything we put our minds to this weekend, it worked out, and I'm just looking forward to winter now. So good points bag. There we go. I go to Winton, we own the place, so absolutely love it down there. We're going to be a hard one to beat down there, I'm pretty sure.
Well, you know what? 1 point's better than no points, so I'll take that anytime. Absolutely fantastic. Actually, we're doing a little bit through COVID, but not much really. Everyone was restricted, and it's just fantastic to get back out and have a crowd screaming at you and everything. Absolutely fantastic.
I threw a fan belt, and the battery started going flat, and the fan on the fuel cooler got slower and slower. And the fans on the radiator, because I don't have an engine fan, it's only thermo fans, they got slower and slower, so the temperature got higher. And the truck, when the fuel temp gets too high, starts missing and carrying on, which you would have heard. So you've really got to drive it really, really delicately to keep it going. So that's the position I was in. And apart from that, I got passed by 2 pretty good drivers. So, here's what it is.
Right here from our winners at the end of round number 1. And Lockie, the points are fascinating as we complete the opening round of the championship.
Just 5 points in it between Stephen Zavitt and Frank Amoroso. Good consistent weekend for Marcus Priwitz. He's right in the game as well. Lockie Fern, quite achievement this weekend. 4th in the championship on 46 points ahead of his dad Robbie Fern. 3 points behind. A tough old weekend for Barry Butwell. He's buried down in 9th in the standings with just 24 points after a weekend playing with mechanical issues.
Great opening round at the Hi-Tec Oils Super Truck Nationals at Wakefield Park. Don't forget, of course, the next round is coming up at Winton Motor Raceway, July 10 and 11. Make sure you join us then, but until then, it's bye for now.